And my guest today is a former linebacker for the NFL Houston Texans. He had a stellar 9-year career with Houston and became the team's all-time leading tackler. Brian Cushing, welcome to the show. Now, when I think about what it takes to make it in the NFL, I think about incredible competitive drive. I want to get into the head of Brian Cushing. You're no stranger to pain. What are your secrets to overcoming adversity?
Mental strength. As far as the season-ending injuries, there is a lot more mental warfare that goes into it within yourself.
How do you handle that?
Welcome to the Lee Labrada Show.
Brought to you by Lean Body, the #1 protein shake in gyms across America.
Welcome back, you guys. As you know, my show is all about helping you improve your physical, mental, and spiritual health. And today, you're going to learn from a world-class athlete about how you can tap into your inner competitive drive to help you achieve your goals. Now, when I think about what it takes to make it in the NFL, I think about athletes who possess incredible competitive drive and determination. And my guest today is a former linebacker for the NFL Houston Texans and an amazing human being. He played college football for the USC Trojans, where he was an All-American and was selected by the NFL Houston Texans in the first round of the 2009 NFL Draft. That year, he was also selected as the NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. He had a stellar 9-year career with Houston from 2009 to 2017 and became the team's all-time leading tackler. Brian Cushing, welcome to the show.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Lee.
Brian, one of the many things I admire about you is not only are you a world-class athlete, but you've also, have established yourself as a father, a husband, a businessman, so much. But what I'd like to do is I would like to start by asking you about some of your the athletic endeavors and,
Sure.
and that type of thing. So let's talk about being an athlete first. So we met almost 14 years ago, and we were introduced by Brandon Hancock,
Correct.
who I believe was the fullback at USC when you were there. And Brandon told me that when you first came out to USC, you had a little bit of extra weight on you, and that you went into the weight room, and then that weight room helped to transform you and helped you to get into the position of linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I knew from an early on age that I had passion for football and loved playing the game. And once I was introduced to the weight room and saw a direct correlation between talent and success and being able to better myself, I was basically living in there at that point, knowing that it could help me more on the field, help me stay healthier, and mentally gave me more confidence knowing I was ready to go into a game that I had trained and prepared the right way. I fell in love with the weight room at a very early age. I saw the direct correlation between training, working hard, preparation, and how it continued and translated onto the field. So I knew that there was an outside kind of resource that I can use that can help my play on the field. I was all in. And then once I got to USC, seeing some of the better players and how hard they worked out or how hard they prepared, just fell right in line, asked as many questions as I could, try to absorb as much knowledge as I could. Had a great strength coaching staff around us that was willing to work extra with younger guys or whoever wanted to work more. So once I started noticing, personal gains in the weight room that were translating directly to the football field, I was basically living in there at that point.
Yeah, that's great. So let me ask you this: what did you see changes pretty fast? Did you get strong fast? Did you drop body fat fast?
Yeah. I wasn't necessarily an expert with diet yet, but luckily at a younger age, my metabolism took care of a lot of that. But I think once I got to college is when it kind of slowed down a little bit, and I had to go all in diet, nutrition, workout, recovery. And that's, really when I started asking a lot more questions. I was getting strong quickly, not necessarily seeing as much change as I'd like, body composition wise, until I started eating better. And like I said, asking more questions and really learning about the whole process. And I had a great team with me though. And like I said, it was open resources. Guys were open books, willing to help me with everything along the way. And I saw progress quick, but I wanted more.
Brian, what did your diet look like at that time? In other words, right there during that period of your life when you're making that big transition.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of, training tables and basically eating whenever I could.
Okay.
But a lot of times there was no breakfast involved. I was waking up, going to class.
So we're
working
hitting
out.
like a protein shake or something?
No, if I had it,
Yeah.
But it was a rougher time in my life.
Yeah.
As far as having the resources to be able to eat whenever I wanted or having the exact meal that I'd like to have.
Right. So you just picked whatever you could off the training table.
Pretty much.
So lots of calories, but you have to really be choosy to make sure you get enough protein and all
Yes. Yeah. And, there's different themes of different nights too. And, taco night and all these other things that aren't necessarily probably the best. But at that point in my life, I just thought the more I ate, the better it was.
that. Yeah. If you guys could see the shape that he's in, I mean, it's just, and it's incredible. You look great. You look strong. You look healthy. So how has your training changed? What do you do to train nowadays?
Yeah. I'm trying to do some kind of resistance training 4 to 5 times a week.
4 to 5 times?
Yep. And then the older I've gotten, as much as I don't like it, try to incorporate some cardio as well, whether it's steady state, zone 2, something for a longer duration where I don't need as much quick twitch anymore.
Right.
But I'm trying my better myself for the long haul of overall health.
What kind of 4-day-a-week program do you use? Is it a push-pull? How do you split it up?
Usually upper lower splits.
Lower
Splits. That there's some variation within there as well, but I've always kind of been a upper lower split kind of conjugate training since I've been in high school.
Is it mostly weights or is it machines as well?
Both. If I'm at my house, it's more weights, and that's really all I have. But if I'm lucky enough to sneak out to a gym, I'll incorporate some machines as well.
And I know you have a gym. We'll be talking about that later.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
What's the nutrition program look like these days? What's a typical day of eating in your life?
Yeah, I think it's just depending on the kid's schedule and the practices that night. But up until that point, I try to eat as clean and as consistent as possible. I'm usually a 10 to 6 window as far as eating, 10 a.m. and try to cut it off after 6 p.m.
So it's a form of intermittent fasting. That you do.
I guess you can say that. And that's something I've been trying newer and more recently.
Right. Do you feel good on that?
I do.
Okay.
I do. But there are some nights where I'm starving at 9, 10 o'clock.
And are you regimented to the point where if after 6 you're starving to death, you won't eat? Or you cut yourself some slack?
I think it's depending on how the kids' practice goes that night, level of stress and where I'm at, or what has been made or what's available at the house later on.
So if you're stressed, you might have a little bit extra.
I might have a little.
I think we all do that sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
no doubt.
It's crazy. So I want to get into the head of Brian Cushing to unlock some of the secrets that it takes to become a winner. What does it take to perform at a world-class level day in and day out?
I think a 100% tapped in mentality. I think everything you do in your life has to be geared towards your profession. I think every decision that goes into your day has to be towards the goal of being the best possible at your position or your occupation that you do. Really from 19 on till 30, that's kind of how I thought. It was selfish but necessary.
Right. So you're totally drilled in and focused on what you have to do. It's your job.
Absolutely. No, every decision went into performance, longevity, and just being available to be the best player Sunday as possible.
How did you get yourself mentally prepared for games?
I thought there was enough practice at it. I thought it became pretty easy. And from a very young age, I was able to kind of dial in and switch over pretty quickly to the mindset of a game. From a young age all the way till my last playing days, I think I was very loose in the locker room, but I think as soon as we stepped out of the locker room, it was just a completely different mindset that clicked. Just because I knew the physicality and tenacity of the game and what I needed to bring to be ready for myself and for my team.
Did you find it that you found a way to turn it on and off?
Yeah.
And when you get out on the field, when you get out of the locker room, you get out there on the field, was there any ritual, anything that you would say to yourself to turn it on?
Not so much. You know, if it was a home game, once we walked out of that same locker room, it was pretty consistent. Once it was an away game, as soon as I heard an opposing fan saying something to me, I was locked in pretty consistently.
Yeah.
You know, the boos were motivating. The national anthem always got me on the verge of tears.
Oh, me too.
And I'm still there.
Still doesn't.
It still does.
Still doesn't.
You know, just have to remind myself I'm not playing. But as far as the on-off switch, I think it was a lot easier to go on than it was to turn off.
Right. So it would take you a little while to come down, I'm sure, from the adrenaline of the game, right?
Yeah. It was one of those deals where if we had a noon game, I think by 6, 7 o'clock or the Sunday night football game that night, I was kind of finally winding down a little bit. But any later games, Monday night, I had trouble sleeping.
Yeah, it just taps into that fight or flight.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's very hard to
like a survival thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And speaking of which, I know that you played with your share of injuries.
Yeah.
You're no stranger to pain, you know, and so what are your secrets to overcoming adversity?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think there's two different things that go into that, right? I think there's the acute kind of injuries, and I think there's the season-ending injuries that require a lot more mental strength. And you know, as far as the bumps and bruises, I was religious about my recovery, you know, and there was some a process every single day after practice that, you know, 2 to 3 hours, depending on what was hurting me, that I couldn't not do until I left the stadium that day. And then once I got home, there was a different individual usually every night of the week working on me, whether it was ART, chiropractor, IV therapy, soft tissue, acupuncture. I just did it all. And I knew if I did that, I would also be a lot more mentally comfortable going into the game, knowing that I had done my share and I was ready.
That's right.
And as far as the season-ending injuries, there is a lot more mental warfare that goes into it within yourself. How
do you handle that? I mean, do you beat because it's easy to beat yourself up, right?
Yeah.
Or to get depressed and that type of thing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ebbs and flows throughout the whole process of coming back. You know, every day is a battle. Every day is, you know, the rehab can be very monotonous. It can be boring. It could be grueling. It could be hard. But I just kept reminding myself during those days that every day that had passed, I was one more day closer to playing again.
That's a great way to frame it. Yeah. So this mental toughness that you have, do you think that that's something that you developed over time, or is it something that's just kind of innate to your personality?
I think both. I think it was instilled in me from a very young age from my dad and my mom. Both had very humble beginnings, and I had an older brother, older sister that kind of reiterated that same message. So I had a lot of guidance in my life. There was no doubt. And
it's a blessing.
Absolutely. It is. You know, I was constantly reminded to not feel sorry for myself if something was to happen, to push through. I think as time went on, I really started to kind of fall in love with that mindset because I saw the results that would come from it. You know, I saw guys in my team that were growing up that would let things get to them, that would fall apart at what I thought weren't very challenging moments. And that itself was actually motivating as well, to know that I felt more battle tested. I felt more ready. And, you know, there was points in my career where I thought I could handle anything. That's
an excellent way of putting it, battle tested.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful point to get to where you feel that confident.
Yes.
Now, let's talk for a second about visualization. Do you, as an athlete, and even now, do you use visualization techniques?
You know, I think I did, but wasn't even really realizing it. Mm-hmm. You know, I had a lot of images I would replay in my mind, how I thought a game would go. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, you know, when the game was going that way, it was kind of like, this is it. This is exactly what I was thinking about. But there are the unexpected turn of events that happen in game 2 that you have to be ready for.
Right.
But I think the visualization is important. You hear a ton of athletes talk about it. My wife stresses it all the time to my oldest son, and he started doing it. You know, I see him in baseball. He's in an on-deck circle. His eyes are closed, and he goes up there, and he looks calm and ready to go.
Picture yourself doing it in your mind's eye.
Yeah. So I like I said, I've noticed a lot of athletes performing it and doing it. And, even though I wasn't very aware that I was doing it, I was at the same time too. There was definitely some premeditated thoughts and visions of how I thought a game or practice would go.
And it eventually just becomes part of you.
Yeah.
In other words, where that's just a mental habit that you engage in.
Sure.
Which is really positive. Now, I want to ask you about the game, a little bit about the game. You were known as one of the hardest hitters ever in the game. So I have to ask you, for the fans out there, including me, what was the hardest hit that you ever took, and what was the hardest hit you ever gave, if anything comes to mind?
There were some hard hits on some skill players, but I always took pride in knocking a guy down that outweighed me by 100 pounds or more. So there was some linemen and it wasn't even a really big play on film because it wasn't a tackle necessarily. So that's what I really took pride in. Was the smaller guy in the situation that was able to, hit somebody harder than they expected and kind of catch them off guard, or they were expecting and still was able to do it. The hardest hit I had probably received was, there was a bunch in college and in the NFL, but there was one in high school where I was completely blindsided. We were playing down in South Jersey at Notre Dame High School, and it was a crackback on me, and I didn't see it. And I was hit into their sideline, and I looked up, and there's about 10 guys standing over me, and everybody knew who I was and just kind of, trying to wear me out. But it was a situation where, as bad a pain I was in, I had to get up as soon as I could. And
it makes a statement, doesn't it?
It does. And if you don't let people know that it doesn't bother you, and someone just put 100% into trying to bother you and it doesn't.
Right.
That's a powerful statement.
It is.
And,
it's unnerving. It can be unnerving.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They can't get you down.
No. And it's the same thing I try to reiterate to my kids too. No matter how the game is going, and if it's not going like you expect, don't wear it physically.
That's great advice. So speaking of which, if you had a bad play, how would you deal with that? Or how would you push the reset button, so to speak? And I ask this because there's a lot of viewers out there that struggle with things in their life. And so what's your advice for people that have had a quote unquote a bad play?
Yeah.
And that they need to get up.
Yeah. Well, don't let it define yourself. If you know it's a bad play and you think it's a bad play, it probably is a bad play, right? And if you're not proud of it, then do something that you're proud of and try to do it as quickly as possible. And luckily for the sport of football, it comes pretty quickly, right? There's a bad play, and then 15, 20 seconds later, you get another opportunity.
You got to reset and if your head is still on that other play.
Yes. And I think quarterbacks are the best at it, the good ones.
Right.
I think that they're the best at it because they can have a horrible series and come back and have an 80-yard touchdown drive and just, be almost perfect. So it's, quick memory and got to forget it real quick and move on to the next play. So can't get hung up in the moment, good or bad. I think that the best guys are the emotionally stable ones that, aren't celebrating too much and aren't screaming too much either.
Right.
Kind of even
something to be said for that.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, every athlete reaches a point in their career, myself included, where we move on.
Yeah.
And, was that something that you knew at a certain time? In other words, how did you know when it was time for you to go into your next phase of life?
Yeah. If you asked me in the middle of my career when I thought I'd retire, I'd probably tell you never.
Right.
I thought I was going to be the outlier that would play forever and somehow be able to do it. But it was probably my first game my last year. I had a real bad concussion on the goal line, and I remember walking off the field, and I couldn't feel my left foot really contacting the ground.
Okay. That scared you?
It did. I went into the locker room and went to the training room, and then my dad came down, and I just remember being emotionally a wreck, just crying, because I think it was a lot of realization that like you're getting close to the end. If not, this is it. You
have this play where you have a concussion or near concussion on the goal line, and you come off and you're in the locker room and something's not right.
Yeah. No, emotionally very unstable and very quickly. And I think seeing my dad when he walked into the training room too was almost confirmation that it was close to the end for me. Obviously I was a parent of 2 at the time, and a lot of thoughts start rushing into your head about the future and what's next, or if you can play any longer or not. And it got to a point where, in the NFL, you're always given resources and information about post-playing. And as much as you want to act like you're all in on it, I felt that any thought or different mindset towards that would take away from my actual play. Because no one's ever that's played long enough, done and ready to be done playing.
I don't think anybody's ever ready
No.
to stop.
Right.
But I know that in my case, I noticed changes in my body.
Yeah.
By the time I was in my mid-30s, and it was just time to retire.
Yeah. And it's a hard realization. It really is. And I think a lot of it is there's a lot of doubt before that even creeps in, or a lot of neglect, or you not believing that's really happening or not.
Right.
It was hard to tell if it was a lot of my physical changes. It was hard to tell if it was temporary or, permanent, where especially running and cutting and didn't feel as fast as I used to. Is this just something that I'm off for the day or the week, or am I never going to be as fast as I was again?
Right.
So that's where that self-doubt creeps in again too, and that mental warfare, because like you touched upon, and I said, no one ever is ready to quite hang it up.
Right. And for me, I reached a point where I realized that my priorities were different.
Yeah.
My first son had been born,
Yep.
towards the tail end of my pro bodybuilding career, and I always told myself there's life after bodybuilding.
Yes. Yeah.
There's life after pro football.
Absolutely.
I would imagine that, that having children, changes your perspective as well, because you want to be functional, you want to be healthy.
Yeah.
You want to be able to do things with them, and,
Yeah. No, and you do. But for me, there was so much identity too as a football playing father that I think I thought the kids really loved. But the older I've gotten, I realized it was just the dad they loved.
they
no
love
matter
you
what
either
he
way,
did.
man.
I think it was a conversation my wife and I had with them, and this is kind of the moment I kind of realized, where they were with their priorities. I came home and my wife and I kind of told them, Dad's probably going to be done playing. And I think one of the first questions was, well, how are we going to get the Under Armour clothes now? And that's where I'm like, you know what? I'm okay being done playing now, because my biggest concern was them being, heartbroken.
Yeah.
They couldn't watch their dad play football anymore.
Right.
And they definitely were. And, obviously probably wish I played 2, 3, 4 more years or something. But at the same time, it was kind of funny in the moment. And it was a lot of stress off of my back when I heard kind of where they were mentally. And
You'll always be Brian Cushing, and they will always be proud of you.
yes.
No doubt
I
about it.
appreciate that.
Brian, every successful person that I've talked to has a special someone or someones in their life. Who was it that inspired or motivated you?
That was my dad, just a really hardworking individual that didn't have much, but made sure you had everything you needed, and worked his ass off too. Never saw him take a sick day. Never saw him complain about the situation. And just, could have a horrible day at work, week of travel, and, mom drops me off at practice and I see him taking his tie off, walking onto the field, and always there to coach and help. So, he was the one that really instilled all of my mindset, passion, and just was able to bring it out of me. So, and there's been other people in the process as well. I got to college, I was coached by Ken Norton Jr. and I was a huge Cowboy fan and Ken Norton fan growing up. And then he's coaching me in college, so his word was golden to me. Ultimate motivator. And, as I got older, it was my wife as well. As she understood me more, what motivated me, what made me go, and also kept me in check too, when things were not going as planned, and is always constant reminding me there's more to life. There's more to life, and the importance of family and, being a husband and being a father. So
you're a very blessed man.
Yes.
Very blessed.
Absolutely.
And you have 3 beautiful boys.
Yep.
We were talking about earlier who are involved in baseball and football.
Yeah.
Are they following in your footsteps?
I don't know. I've expressed to them many times, don't ever feel like you have to play football, right? If you love it and you want to go for it, absolutely. And I explain what comes along with it, how physically and mentally tough it is, but I'm going to give them that choice. I would feel very hypocritical if I just cut them off and say, you're not doing this. Although some part of me wishes they wouldn't.
Right. Right.
But I know how similar they are to me as well. I know how passionate they are. I know how competitive they are. I know how physical they are.
Right.
So, there's something inside of us that makes us go when it comes to that sport. And, whether it's football, baseball, or something else, I just ask that they do something and it'd be 100%.
It's really interesting that you said that, because growing up, my boys did not know very much about my career as a pro bodybuilder.
Yeah.
I've got a small gym at home, and we all use it. And my wife would go out there and we would work out together. And the boys, when they were little, they were just playing around on the weights and stuff. So they grew up in that environment, but they were never pushed to go into bodybuilding. And this is what made me comment on this, is when you said that I just asked them that they play a sport. That was our position as well.
Sure.
We don't care which sport you play, but play a sport.
Yeah.
And so they did. They played. They played baseball. They played football. Mine ended up playing football. And then later, but it wasn't until late in high school that Hunter really got interested in the changes that were happening in his body.
Yes.
And then one day, it was his freshman year in college, and he said, "Dad, I want to be a professional bodybuilder."
Yeah.
And I said to myself, okay, well, that's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
That's a mixed bag, because everything that goes with it and how hard it is, and how hard it is physically and that type of thing. And, but I supported him.
Yeah.
And, in retrospect, he made the right decision.
Sure.
So sometimes it works out that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember that transition. I remember when Hunter was going through that. Because we were talking at the time when he was up at college playing football.
That's right.
And I think once your passion switches from one thing to the other and you're of that age, why not go for it?
You have to be passionate about a sport to pursue it at a competitive level, and to pursue it at the world level. You just have to be just laser focused on it, for sure.
Obsessed. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit before we go. Let's talk about your new sports training center.
Yeah.
And it's called Garage Total Sports Training.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So we'd opened about a year and a half. I think this November will be 2 years ago, with the idea of really sport-specific training geared towards the youth, but a place that kids could go to really develop in the sport they want to be good at. The training programs are tailored to what a kid wants, what a coach says the kid needs for the sport. And they have every opportunity to do it there with 50 yards of turf.
Wow.
Full weight room, indoor turf as well, batting cages. We just purchased a new Proteus machine, which has been really cool. I'm still trying to figure all the ins and outs of it, but luckily we have a professional on staff that knows exactly how it works. We have other testing pieces of equipment as well. We have a force plate. We have an isometric kind of measuring device. We have hand-eye coordination training with a
that's impressive.
screen laser reaction. So we're kind of trying to cover it all, but the necessary stuff. That trying to bring anything in there it's just fluff or there because everyone else has one.
Right.
We're trying to bring the right piece of equipment, the right people over there that are serious about developing, bettering themselves both on and off the field.
And do your boys train there?
They do. Our baseball team trains there in the spring. We do a lot of football stuff there in the fall. But as you know, a lot of the youth sports have become year round now, so they're always hitting there. And very interested to see as they get older as well, a lot of these tracking devices and seeing strength gains throughout the years and seeing that they stay symmetrical, right and left leg, seeing that their hand-eye coordination continues to improve, reaction time continues to improve. So there's so much data and
technology,
measurements out there now. It's tough to say, the kid's really not getting better when every number says he is, or you don't feel like you are, but
right. It really, I find that it's very encouraging also to be able to measure your progress. Right?
Absolutely.
Because I'm asked sometimes, well, how do I stay motivated?
Yeah.
And I think one of the ways that you stay motivated is by getting feedback.
Yep.
And being able to measure your progress.
Yes.
It's motivating, especially for these youngsters, right?
Absolutely. It's a satisfying feeling when you're putting in that much work and a computer is actually telling you, yes, you are getting stronger, faster, better.
Where do our viewers find information on Garage Total Training?
Yep. So we have an Instagram, Garage Total Training.
Okay.
Website as well. And anyone that's Googling it, it's Garage Total Training. We're right off 1919 Antoine Drive. We're in kind of the Old Spring Branch area.
In Houston, Texas, guys.
That's right. So we're right over there, kind of 610, I-10, tucked behind the Improv. And it's been a real cool spot. It's awesome seeing how it's been developed.
Do you go in and coach very much?
I do a good amount. We have our walkthroughs there on Friday as well. But there's been a lot of one-offs for other people that have, asked to do some stuff. And, if I have the time, I'm more than willing to go over there and help them out.
And I can sense that about you, that you're a type of person that at this point in your life, you really want to help other athletes and especially kids. And what would you say that your life mission is?
I think my life mission, first and foremost, is to give my own children the best opportunity to succeed and be good people. Besides that, which is also a major priority of mine, is to share the knowledge that I have with people that are really serious about what they want to do. If a kid comes in and he's all in on playing linebacker, I've had enough experience and enough knowledge that I'll help them as much as I possibly can. Because I think there's a lot of not great coaching out there. I think there's a lot of not great guidance out there.
Right.
Especially when it goes from the high school to college level and kids are deciding where they want to go play or if they should. Just giving them all the possibilities out there and letting them know all the things that come with it. And, but then let them make their own decision as well.
The things that they need to bridge from going from high school to college.
Correct. Yes. And all the possibilities and things that can come along the way. A lot of it depends on where you end up and the coach you're playing for and
right.
Obviously staying healthy.
Right.
But, it goes back to when people ask, are your kids going to play football? It's, for
you probably get that a lot.
I do, especially with all the recent things that have come out, with head trauma, concussions, and health players that are done playing. It's tough for me to say no when I've been blessed with so many things from the sport.
Right.
And how many things have opened doors for me other places from playing the sport and the people I've met and the relationships that I've been able to build through it. So there's, in my opinion, a lot more good that's outweighed the bad.
I would agree.
And, it's a tough physical sport, but it could be very rewarding as well.
For sure. Brian, I'm a retired professional bodybuilder. As you know, I'm often asked if I still follow bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And I do.
Yeah.
Now, if somebody asks you, do you still follow football? What's your answer?
Yes. Not as serious as when I played.
Right.
But I'm obviously still a fan of the sport. I love college football as well. But it's interesting, and I'm sure it's the same with bodybuilding, is just seeing the sport evolve even shortly after you're done playing. seeing how the training is changing, seeing how the film watching has changed.
It's incredible.
Seeing how the offenses alone have changed, and how now defenses have to match up athlete for athlete.
It becomes more technical, doesn't
it? Absolutely. And I was, fortunate enough also 2 years after I was done playing, I coached the Texans for a little bit.
And I remember that. Now, you were the strength and conditioning coach for the Texans.
I was, yes. And I helped with linebackers as well. So I saw a lot more behind the scenes stuff than I did as a player, but gave me a much bigger appreciation towards everything that goes as far as coaching.
I've always felt that you were a football player who loved bodybuilding.
Yes, absolutely. I loved it. I loved training. I think one time when we went out to eat, I told you that sometimes I felt football got in the way of my training.
Yes, I remember that. I remember that. And I remember thinking, Brian loves bodybuilding so much. He's a frustrated bodybuilder.
That football thing got in the way. Yeah. No, I love both, but I love how they complemented each other.
They're great sports. Yeah, they really are.
Yeah.
Speaking of Texans, your former teammate, D'Amico Ryan, wow. What a transition. Unbelievable, Ryan. And they're having a pretty good season.
They are. And they're only going to get better. They got the right guy there. And I'm hoping he's there for a long, long time. I just remember the press conference when he was hired and looking up at the stage, and he smiled, and seeing him up there, it was surreal.
Amazing, wasn't it?
Surreal experience.
Yeah, I've mentioned you were very happy for him.
Absolutely. Happy, proud. I knew he'd be a head coach in the NFL one day, but just the fact he's the head coach for the Texans on top of it was just like, but good people get good things in life.
100%.
They really do. And he's a great person. And, I know his passion was eventually to move back to Houston, whether it was coaching or just living there in the off season, and he got it all. And I know,
good for him.
Yeah. I know he's going to run with it too. Like, this is not a guy.
He's already off to a great start.
Yeah, he's going to do everything he can to stay head coach of the Houston Texans for a long time. So it's really cool to see.
Brian, do you have any aspirations to be a head coach?
I go back and forth. I go back and forth with that a lot. I love coaching my kids' sports. I love being able to watch film, give kids information, teach them how to anticipate things and the smaller stuff in the game, but that's so technical. I love seeing it click in their minds. Like, I've seen this before. This is what's going to happen. And they make the play and then fall in love with the process as well.
That's an amazing way to put it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's deja vu for you in some ways.
Yeah. No, it is. It is. I had a lot of good coaches growing up, but being able to now help my kids, their teammates and friends, I'm pretty content with that for now. Because I've done the other path before. I've coached at the NFL level. I know the hours that are required.
I would imagine it's an amazing, compromise on your time.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. And that was a main reason I stepped away was I remember 2020, we were up at Heinz Field. It was the COVID season, so there was no fans there. So we're playing there.
That's a strange feeling.
It was. And I'm helping with the personnel on defense. And anytime the defense came off the field, I was looking at my phone for the game changer, checking my son's baseball game that was going at the same time.
Aha.
So I was like, you know what? I love this, but I love that more.
Of course.
And that's not forever.
That isn't forever. You can't make that time back up.
No.
Is what I've always told my friends with kids.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a dad talking now.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. And that was kind of the deciding moment for me that I'm not ruling it out that I'd ever go back, but my priority right now is going to be for them while they need it.
I think you've chosen well, Brian.
Thank you.
Brian, this has been incredibly inspirational today. And I just want to thank you for joining us. You did an amazing job.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
And where can they find you? On Instagram and whatnot?
Yeah, at Instagram, Brian 56 Cushing, because Brian Cushing 56 was already taken.
Go figure, right?
So yeah, I don't know how that happened, but that's my Instagram. And like I said, you can reach me through the Garage's Instagram as well, website, or any of those other resources.
Guys, be sure to check it out. Man, you did awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, guys, help us to grow the Lee Labrada Show by sharing this podcast with one of your friends, and be sure to hit the subscribe button. All right. Stay motivated, get up, and look up. God bless you.
The Lee Labrada Show.
Thunder from a distant shore. Voices in my head imprison me.